On September 17th, 1939, the Soviet Union sent troops into the eastern regions of Poland, taking advantage of the fact that the country was already at war with Nazi Germany. For Poland, this day became a symbol of betrayal and the beginning of a new occupation. The country ended up divided between two totalitarian powers, while the Western Allies limited themselves to verbal protests and were unable to provide real assistance. And now, 86 years later, the Poles are once again facing threats from Moscow. And the aggressor's methods are exactly the same. Back then, in September 1939, Soviet propaganda justified the invasion of its troops into the neighboring country by claiming it was to protect Ukrainians and Belarusians. They said that the Polish state was collapsing, and the Soviet Union simply wanted to provide preventive assistance. A very familiar narrative, starting a bloody war under the guise of peace and caring for so-called brotherly nations. In reality, all this supposed concern was based on secret agreements with Germany, spelled out in the secret protocol to the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. This document called for the division of Poland and the establishment of a Soviet-German border. Those events turned into a real tragedy for Poland. Mass arrests and repressions. Hundreds of thousands of Polish citizens were deported deep into the USSR. And thousands of officers, essentially the entire elite of the Polish army, were executed. In March 1940, the head of the NKVD, Beria, wrote a memorandum to Stalin, which became the starting point of the Katyn tragedy.
At present, a large number of former officers of the Polish army, former employees of the Polish police and intelligence agencies, members of Polish nationalist counter-revolutionary parties, participants in clandestine counter-revolutionary insurgent organizations, defectors, and others are being held in NKVD USSR prisoner of war camps and in prisons in the western regions of Ukraine and Belarus. All of them are sworn enemies of Soviet power, filled with hatred for the Soviet system. Each of them is just waiting to be released, so that they can actively join the fight against Soviet power. People's Commissar of Internal Affairs of the USSR, LP, Beria, March 5th, 1940.
The prisoners were taken to be executed in Kiev, Kharkiv, Kherson, Tver, and Minsk. According to the data cited in the memo by KGB Chairman Sheplin, a total of 21,857 people were executed. In Katyn alone, in the Smolensk region, they killed 4,421 people. For many years, Soviet propaganda tried to hide everything related to this tragedy. Then they started claiming that the Poles in Katyn were supposedly executed by the Germans in 1941 when they reached Smolensk. And only under incredible pressure from the international community did the NKVD have to admit to this horrific crime. In the Soviet Union, they also tried to shift the blame for the invasion of Poland, and I quote, onto the unreasonable Warsaw leadership and the Western countries. Many years later, Putin would repeat almost word for word all these lies. I quote, "Our actions on the territory of Ukraine are dictated by only one thing, to put an end to the war that was unleashed by the West and its satellites." The only difference is that some of these talking points were written by the NKVD and others by the FSB. As for provocations against Warsaw, the Kremlin dictator is also ready to act until he is stopped by force. Dozens of Russian drones in Polish airspace are not an accident and not a mistake. The aggressor's playbook is still the same: intimidate neighbors and sow doubt about the reliability of collective defense.
We don't think Russia is behind this provocation. We know it. However, I also understand that for everyone who would like some kind of normalization, stabilization, or a policy of mutual understanding with Russia, this situation is very unpleasant. After all, what happened in the skies over Poland on the night of September 10th, it's really hard to pretend that nothing happened. I hope none of our allies will pretend that nothing happened, because it really did.
The Russian-Belarusian exercises Zapad 2025 have also turned into an outright show of force. Moscow has transferred mobile Iskander-M missile systems to the Kaliningrad region, loudly announcing that these missiles can reach Warsaw in a matter of minutes. At the same time, a Zircon hypersonic missile was launched in the Barents Sea. The aggressor was eager to show that it can strike from the sea. And despite assurances from the Russian military that these are merely training maneuvers for their own defense, the West perceived these actions as a real threat.
Western politicians keep saying that Putin only understands the language of force, but they are afraid to actually show it. Russia is an empire of lies. It never declares war and always denies its treacherous actions. When Russian missiles fall on Poland, it will be too late. Let's treat the shahids over Poland as a final warning and draw conclusions from it. Ever since the annexation of Crimea, it's been clear that sooner or later Russia will decide to put things to the test. What are NATO's mutual security guarantees really worth? The nighttime drone attack is a prelude to such a test. From the Newsweek Polska publication.
In 1939, when the Soviet Union sent troops into Poland and Germany, they knew that none of the Western countries would dare to stop them. Back then, Warsaw was left virtually alone against two totalitarian regimes. Now, Poland is a country of the European Union and NATO. An attack on it will be considered an attack on the entire alliance. In addition, Warsaw enjoys political and economic support from the EU. And Moscow is unable to exert real pressure on it. But in any case, the Poles remember their history well. That's why, in case of armed aggression, they have started preparing reservists. In the first 7 months of this year, a record 20,000 people signed up for training.
When I talk to my friends, many of them want to join the military. At the same time, I believe that even the least patriotic Pole has, deep down, an instinct to come together in difficult times. And this is clearly evident from the history of our country and our entire nation.
One of the main tasks of the units in peacetime is to prepare reserves. This is not something extra or, as some say, unnecessary. It is one of the core tasks. In conflicts, especially prolonged ones, it is always the reserves that win.
Polish President Karol Nawrocki included in the agenda of his first foreign visit a discussion of the Russian drone attack and NATO countries' response to this incident. And a remarkable twist of history. Germany has become the key country that can provide support to Poland. One of Warsaw's proposals is that alliance forces could shoot down Russian drones in Ukrainian airspace. This was previously stated by Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski.
We don't believe there were 20 mistakes in one night. The first violation of our airspace happened before midnight, and we shot down the last drone at 6:30 in the morning. So, the air battle lasted for 7 hours. 7 hours is not a mistake. We must collectively convey to Putin that his hybrid war has limits, and we will stop him. But remember, this is not an isolated incident. It is part of a larger pattern.
Moscow also responded to this proposal. Thus, the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, Medvedev, wrote that the possibility for NATO countries to shoot down Russian drones would mean a war between the alliance and Russia. One of the senators in the Federation Council, Vladimir Dzhabarov, stated, and I quote, "Poland may face a new partition if it tries to get involved in a military adventure again." So open and cynical, just like that. After all these years, the aggressor has not only failed to change its methods of provocation, intimidation, and attempts to impose its will by force, but apparently is even quite proud of it.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.